Hello, welcome back everybody to the Our Cricket podcast. And as Alyssa Healy has said, the Ashes are on the line. Proper.
Proper. I
Proper.
mean, what a week we have had, Dan. This is going to be an episode filled with so much to talk about. Episode 3. Can't believe we're in week 3, to be honest. It feels like it's flown by.
That's what happens when you're having fun, Joe. But it's going to be kind of 45 minutes, 60 minutes of full optimism. As Alyssa said, they're on the line proper. I assume there was a long pause. They put a comma on behind the alive bit. So I assume she must have really kind of held the pause, built the suspense up. But I mean, they're kind of choking it at the moment, the Aussie women. I didn't think they were going to be able to do it, but kind of choking.
Yeah, they're rattled. In my opinion, they are rattled, I reckon. I actually didn't manage to catch that much of the action to watch on TV until I got home last night. So I was listening quite a lot on TMS, and like the bowling and the fielding at the start of the second innings just sounded like so un-Australia-like. I mean, I don't know, like a few people were mentioning whether or not the absence of Meg Lanning's having a bit of an impact on the team in terms of when they found themselves in those crucial moments in the last couple of games, they haven't necessarily been able to turn it on as they're so used to doing and dominating, really. And I think England are putting them under pressure that they probably haven't really felt in, well, over the course of the majority of the last kind of 6 years since that 2017 World Cup that England won.
It does feel a bit like the classic fan / pundit thing to do, though, doesn't it? Like the second that it's not going right, well, we'll just point fingers at like the most obvious thing in the room. And clearly, like everybody kind of knew Meg Lanning missing was going to be a huge blow for Australia anyway. Clearly wasn't an issue through the first kind of 2 games of the tournament. Australia went 6-0 up, and everybody was kind of thinking, wow, this could be done and dusted pretty quick. Particularly where you take into consideration the fact that was the first international series they'd lost in 7 years, I think. That's the first one that they'd lost. And I think quite rightly, people were kind of like, oh, well, this is pretty done and dusted. All they need to do is win one more. And they've retained it. But, I mean, what a way that England have fought back over the course of those 2 T20s, 2 of which you were obviously at. We spoke about your big kind of glitzy day and the hospitality at the Oval, and then we haven't spoken yet about your experience in the cheap seats at Lord's. But how was Lord's?
Yeah, Lord's was good. Although I was actually only there for half of the game because yeah, I know, doesn't sound great, right? So because of the trains just being a bit all over the place, aren't they, at the moment? We had to rush off from St John's Wood to Euston so that we could actually get home, and there was a rain delay for about an hour. So we'd already pretty much planned our time that we were going to leave, and that was at the start of when England eventually went out to bat. But I actually think, I don't know if it's controversial or not, but
we'll find out.
The Duckworth-Lewis coming in and taking the chase to 14 overs, I think that actually helped England, because the way that their team is now set up in terms of, obviously, Capsy getting 46 off 23 just allows them to play their natural game and be really aggressive. And you can't really go about it any other way when your Duckworth-Lewis effectively, you've only got 14 overs to chase down. 119, slippery outfield. Like it ended up going in England's favour, and they delivered and executed their skills. I mean, pretty comfortably in the end. It did get a little bit squeaky as they lost a few wickets towards the back end, but yeah, I mean, absolute kudos to them. And I know it's been mentioned a lot over the past 24 hours how much momentum they've got from not only winning that game at Lord's on Saturday, but also the win down at Bristol yesterday. Epic.
Yeah, they spoke, I can't remember who it was, but they spoke quite tongue-in-cheek about John Ball in relation to Bazball, didn't they? I think it might have been about 9-12 months ago now, maybe, when John Lewis took over. And I can't remember what player it was in particular. But when you look at that England team now, particularly with the way that a lot of those guys have performed in the 100 and those kind of bigger names, as you said, like Capsy, for example, Nat Skiver Brunt is an absolute baller. Like, I personally think probably the best the best female cricketer in the world at the moment. Wyatt absolutely Dunkley tonks it. Like it's a team that's genuinely set up for T20 cricket. The only thing that kind of confuses me slightly with it, but not to kind of detract from the performances over those T20 ones, but I can't understand why Izzy Wong's not had a game. I mean, she stormed it for Mumbai in the WP. It was the WPL, wasn't it? It wasn't the WIPL. WPL. And everyone was kind of like, oh, she's come of age. Like she's been in the squads, but I mean, from an outside perspective, anyway, it doesn't look like she's got near the playing 11.
Yeah, no, I think kind of the word that's been on the street is that she's struggled a bit in terms of having her accuracy on her game kind of thing in the regional games and some of the England warm-up games, I think, from what I can gather. But obviously she does have that difference point in the raw pace, the ability to trouble the batters with the short ball, which we've seen as a tactic actually quite frequently used in this women's series as well as the men's series, obviously. But yeah, no, I'm sure Izzy's obviously working really hard. She's around the squad, building her confidence back up to be in line for whenever her services are needed. But to be honest, it seems like they've obviously backed Lauren Bell throughout the entirety of the Ashes, and she's delivered in taking wickets. So that's obviously great to see in terms of, you know, I think there were a few people after, obviously Anya and both Catherine retired after leading the attack for so long, who was naturally going to come in and be able to fill those shoes as quickly as possible, really. And England have obviously got options, haven't they? They've got Lauren Bell, they've got Lauren Filer, they've got Izzy Wong that are all banging on the door and trying to be the next frontline seamers for the England women.
100%, yeah. And so at the moment, so there's 2 ODIs to play. One's on Sunday down at Southampton, and then the last one is obviously next week at Taunton as well. And if my maths are right, it's currently 6-all. Is that correct in points? Australia obviously only need to win one more game, don't they, to retain the Ashes as kind of a worst case scenario for those girls and the Aussies. England, as you said, in that kind of run of form that they found themselves in with this white ball side of the tournament, they've got 2 more opportunities to go out there and beat this Australian team. And I suppose the positive is, and we'll talk about it a bit about in the men's side of it in a minute, but with the way that the women's Ashes is set up, Australia can't have a boring game, can they? They can't just draw one for the sake of it, just to kind of go, well, let's just make sure we get the job done, and we can't lose this. With the way that the tournament or the series is set up, they have to go out there and be aggressive and win one of these games, which is amazing. But have they got it? How much does Meg Lanning bring to the table as a captain in these kind of crunch situations?
Yeah, I mean, like as we mentioned already, I think it's the easiest thing to do, isn't it? Point fingers and try and come up with excuses as to why they haven't won their last couple. But at the end of the day, I'm sure all those players will actually take responsibility and just know that they haven't been good enough, essentially, and they haven't dealt with the pressure and kind of the impetus that England have injected into the games. And, you know, this England side, they're fired up. From what I can tell, they look as confident as ever, as fired up as ever, and now I think the next test obviously comes on Sunday at Southampton, when it seems as though England could potentially realise that they could actually win the series.
That was going to be my next question. Does it change from, oh crap, we've got to win everything, to, oh crap, we might actually win the whole thing? Like, how much of a difference does that make?